caliber stuff from the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Ohio State's first home win against an AP number one since 1985, and there were no sweats when it came to the total. At one point, this was in the low 50s, closed 46.5. Smart money, public money, all the money was on the under, and it cashed easily in a spread that was anywhere between 1.5 on either end in the last 24 hours goes in the way of the Buckeyes. Hey there, folks. I'm Tommy Trent with Chip Patterson and Tom Fornelli, where Ohio State beats Texas 14-7. Chip, what stood out to you about this Buckeye victory today?
It is the Ohio State defense. You know, the Silver Bullets, I thought they were a big part of Ohio State's championship run 1 year ago. They lose Jim Knowles. They lose not just players to the NFL, but real veteran leaders, Jack Sawyer, JTT, and many, many more. And yet, we look up and they say next man up. They really believe that they have been building out the kind of culture to be able to allow to be able to have all those players go to the NFL. And so Matt Patricia comes in. I thought he had a great game plan to be able to get Arch Manning flustered early. They must have recognized that they were going to have a big advantage at the line of scrimmage because they let that front four absolutely eat. And so for Ohio State, they did not make Julian Sayin do a lot. We are going to spend a lot of time today and for the next week and maybe for the next couple of weeks talking about Arch Manning and what did or did not happen here on this Saturday. Not a lot of conversation about Julian Sayin, good or bad, because he did exactly what was needed. He was a bus driver. He was not a fighter pilot, but as long as the bus driver gets the kids to school, they've done their job, and that's what Julian Sayin did.
As long as you get to your destination, it doesn't matter how you get there. Tom, how did you see this game today?
I mean, this was clearly a game where the defenses were further ahead than the offenses at this point in the season. As Chip mentioned, you know, we could talk about the players in this game. I think the MVP of this game was Ohio State defensive coordinator Matt Patricia, who was kind of flying under the radar. Obviously, the big news for Ohio State during the offseason was that their defensive coordinator from last season left to go become at Penn State. And meanwhile, Patricia steps in, who was a pretty darn good defensive coordinator for that new coach down at North Carolina, Bill Belichick, during the Patriots years. And I thought that this defense had a great plan for a young quarterback making his first road start. Arch Manning had no idea what he was looking at before the snap. They did such an excellent job of disguising their coverages, their blitzes, where they were bringing guys from, so that before Arch Manning snapped the ball, he wasn't sure where to go to with the ball, and he was getting stuck on his first read because of it. He was being surprised by what he saw because of it. And I think they just kept him off balance and flustered all day long, which was able to help them overcome the fact that their offense didn't exactly light the world on fire in this game. Ohio State finished with 203 yards of offense and beat the number one team in the country somehow. That is not something you see happening a whole lot. So for me, the biggest takeaway is Ohio State's defense is still absolutely elite. There is no drop off, even with new names. And for me, that means this team is still very, very much in the picture to repeat as national champs.
So you guys both harken on the defense, and Tom talked about Matt Patricia. Chip, how much did it surprise you that maybe after half of being inefficient on offense with Arch Manning, that we didn't see perhaps more design runs, get him something going instead of just seeing him sort of drop back and try to pass against that elite defense?
Yeah, Tommy, I don't think there was much respect for the Texas wide receivers here, or there was trust maybe in those Ohio State defensive backs to be able to keep them locked up and the players in the back seven. But that is maybe one thing that I overlooked in my preparation for looking at Texas as a number one team in the country and as a national championship contender, because one thing that is really needed to be able to get that quarterback run game going, to be able to get that ground game going, is to have the vertical pass game really be respected. And they lost a lot of receptions when Matthew Golden went off to the NFL draft. And there was an assumption that DeAndre Moore, who flashed at times as a freshman, or maybe even Ryan Wingo, who has that kind of breakaway speed, that they would be able to help continue the development of this offense. But, Texas at wide receiver right now is a real concern. And to be fair, they will not face cornerbacks and safeties like Ohio State most Saturdays when they're going through their schedule. But the Longhorns do have that issue that if you are going to be judged as a national championship contender, you are going to be facing defenses that are close to the caliber of Ohio State's. And that passing game, which again, some of it's on Arch Manning, some of it's on the wide receivers, that passing game is just not going to scare a lot of opponents right now.
Yeah, like Arch Manning is going to wear a lot of the criticism for this game because of his name, because of the hype that was surrounding him all offseason coming into the year. But to be fair to Arch Manning, he didn't ask for any of the hype. He wasn't going out here talking about how he was the chosen one and the next great quarterback. That was the media putting that on his shoulders. And frankly, in this game, while he didn't play well, as Chip was just mentioning, his wide receivers weren't getting open. He didn't really have anywhere to go with the ball. His offensive line, which features plenty of new starters and was inexperienced itself, was not doing a good job of blocking and giving him time in the pocket. Now, to Arch's detriment, he did take a little too long with some reads. He was late on throws. He missed some open targets. There is nobody on this Texas offense who, when you go back and watch the tape this weekend when they're back in Austin, is going to feel like they had a good performance. It just did not happen, but he's the one whose last name is Manning, so he's the one who's going to be wearing the criticism for it.
And whether or not he wants it or not, he came in as the Heisman hopeful and favorite there, and then we saw his odds certainly fluctuate with how things work today. It'll be interesting to see Garrett Nussmeier, Cade Klubnik, how that game turns out, because they were next on the board at roughly 9-1 coming into this week. By the way, Texas had 11 straight road games under their pocket before this game, which was the longest active streak in FBS, and that has now, of course, been snapped. Again, just taking a look at this game, opportunities there, goal line efficiency or lack thereof, Chip, there is what we saw today at the shoe.
Did they watch any tape of Ohio State last season? I mean, how many times did Ohio State come up with goal line stops and short yardage stops? That was something that I thought was very interesting. There wasn't just a little bit more creativity. I mean, I guess a couple of times they did break into a toss, but man, I just was a little bit disappointed. And some of that might have just been what Steve Sarkisian saw in terms of what Matt Patricia was preparing for. But the Buckeyes have made a habit in the last couple of years of being bigger and better and stronger. And when you're on the road, your offensive line, which as Tom mentioned, has a couple new starters, you really think they are going to be blowing off the ball perfectly? This is a really tough moment for that Texas team, which, by the way, speaking of trends, Ohio State trend last year, huge goal line short yardage stops. Texas last year, a trend of not being able to get it done in those goal line red zone short yardage situations. Steve Sarkisian on the Cover 3 podcast, I have mentioned his play calling, his game planning, his scripts often. But one thing that has followed him is that when the field is spread out, there's a lot of things that Sark can draw up in the dirt and be able to go out and have his boys go execute. When the field gets small, things get a little bit more difficult for his offenses, and I think that was something we saw again here today.
Tom, what do you think Sark's going to be working on this week as the Longhorns prepare for San Jose State?
I mean, I think that with San Jose State coming up next, you're probably going to relax a little bit. I do feel like there was a little bit of overcaution with the way that they approached this game, and maybe it was meaningly so, as Chip was just going over. They were, especially in the red zone, they were getting a little too scared with some of that play calling and just trying to beat Ohio State straight up when there really hadn't been any evidence that they were going to be capable of doing that at any point in the game. So I think if you're Texas, you don't want to panic too much. Like, at the end of the day, you just went on the road in the first game of the season and played the defending champions. It's not like it was an easy test. It was a very difficult one, and you failed it. But as poorly as you played, you still gave yourself a chance to win the game late in the fourth quarter. You just couldn't pull through. So if I'm the Longhorns, if I'm Steve Sarkisian, I'm not hitting the panic button. I'm going home. I'm ironing some things out in practice, and I'm probably going out there and kicking San Jose State's butt next week. Sorry, Tommy.